What's going on, guys? Ayiza here, and today I'm going to be making a video around the Quality of Life Month poll for the Miscellaneous week. On my live streams recently, whenever the Old School RuneScape team have released a blog, I've actually gone through and reviewed it live on a stream, gave my thoughts and opinions about what's contained within that blog there and then, and there've been quite a lot of requests, actually, quite surprisingly, for people to want to hear more about my thoughts and actually put this into a format that will allow them to view it. So thankfully, this literally just gone live now. This is the first time that I'll be seeing it. I haven't gone through any of the questions or proofread it beforehand. A few things to note: it will be entirely my opinion on what I'm reading here. This isn't something to come from like something that you should base your thoughts on. This is just my thoughts as they come to me whilst I'm reading the blog, and that is it, nothing else. So please, if you are looking to make votes in-game, do so based on your own opinion. But if you are interested to hear what I have to say about this, then you've came to the right place. Without further ado, I'm just going to crack on and get into it. If nothing else, it will kind of like provide you some insight as to how my brain thinks when I read through Old School RuneScape updates. So here we have it. Quality of Life Month, Week 4, Miscellaneous. It's time for our 4th week of Quality of Life Month, Miscellaneous. We'll also include the proposed sand changes discussed last week. For those of you that might not have seen that, that was in regards to, instead of having the Sandstorm spell, it was to add the guy in the desert with this piece of machinery that you gave sandstone blocks to, as well as GP and buckets, and it gave back buckets of sand. Really cool idea, I really like that, so interested to see what they have to say about this here. They then talk about the schedule that is available for this week, which is likely something that we're able to just, skim over. A suggestions section for where if you want to add any ideas or share your feedback for this particular week, you can head over to there. And then there is a little note here that says, as a quick mention, we're aware of the bug that affected some players shortly after today's update went live, resulting in unwanted combat XP on some accounts. If you're affected by this, make sure you check out this tweet or this forum thread. So I'll leave a link to this particular blog post in the description below. If you have been impacted, head over to the links that are provided within there, and hopefully they can get something sorted for you. Now, the important things, unless obviously your account was affected, that's pretty important. But for me, the more important thing is poll question 1. What have they got in store for us? Should the achievement diary requirement that asks players to complete a round of the Trouble Brewing minigame be changed to only require they enter the lobby instead? The requirements to start Trouble Brewing will not be affected. Interesting question. I have to say I'm fairly surprised to see this, but at the same time I'm not, given the recent changes that they've been making with these kind of like mini games that people don't like. Most namely being the fact that you can now get your angler fishing gear from aerial fishing rather than doing it only by fishing trawler. Granted, it takes you a huge amount longer in order to be able to obtain it that way, but you also gain experience, and I think it's a kind of like a compromise as to they know that they're not going to have the time just yet to be able to fix these mini games. It's not really worth the effort to go through and change them to make it to a point where people will want to play it. So they're looking at alternatives. This one here, it's a pretty big change. You no longer actually have to do anything. The minigame's dead anyway, and this is just going to make the minigame even more dead. It's kind of sad to see in one point, because it would be nice if they could make the minigames more playable, and if it could be made to bring more interest into them. But the reality is, no one's going to do it unless it's going to offer you decent experience rates or have good rewards. So unless they can bring in something like the the minigame reward shop that will make people want to do various minigames, which even then people would just want to do the best minigame, I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference in terms of how active they are. So overall, really good change. When I first did this, it was a pain in the backside because, well, I had to figure out, first of all, how to do Trouble Brewing, and, well, there was no one there. So I was like, well, this is great content, isn't it? Why am I having to do this? The mistake probably was making it a diary requirement in the first place, but I'd rather that they see that you just enter the lobby to show that you've at least attempted to do that than just completely removing the requirement entirely. Let's move on to question 2 now. Should the quest tab be changed to have a 4-tab system similar to the player designed one shown below? This would allow you to switch more easily between the quest, achievement diaries, mini-games, and current favour lists. Having a look at this here, we can see kind of like a mock-up version of what they're offering, as well as a little footnote here. So it looks really nice overall. I think it's pretty decent, because currently in-game, you'll notice that instead of having this tab, it's just like, it's a really small section across the top here of 3 little icons. If I had the time, I would edit things into here, but I'm sure that you're all able to log into game and look at the quest tab, and I really just want to get these videos to be, quick and uploaded instantly whilst the blog is still relatively new. Overall, looks pretty decent. The image here has been provided by General Tractor. They do add a note that in offering this redesign, they open up the possibility of expanding the interface to include additional ideas and tabs shown in the original suggestion of this redesign. They plan on returning to the suggestion and expanding on it further in the future. I think for me personally, this would be another yes vote. I really like the fact that it's a lot easier to be able to click on the individual icons. They are pretty difficult to find at the moment. It looks nice, neat, tidy, and it's still got the old school feel. So, pretty good one from Gentle Tractor there. Good job, dude. Question 3. Should the right-click travel option on Veos be split into Great Corrend and Land's End, allowing players to travel to each destination more conveniently? Currently, it requires going through a dialog box selection. Overall, in all honesty, I don't care about this one. It's cool, fair enough. I like the quick travel options. There are some concerns by certain members within the community when these kind of things get added that we're kind of like removing the level of interaction with NPCs, and now NPCs are just essentially there to just serve as servants, and almost it takes away from the realism of actually being characters that have some kind of purpose in game. You no longer have to talk to them, you just literally go and use and abuse. But the reality is, who really enjoys having to click through a dialog box to select a particular travel option to be able to get through to a particular area? One thing that this will potentially, and I say potentially because I'm not really sure entirely, cause issues with is areas such as Deadman mode. It's now going to be, a right click, one tick escape. So you could head over to Great Corrend or you could head over to Land's End. You could have people on the other end of those areas, for example, ready to, pile onto someone if you were to use those escapes. But typically a lot of the other ships, they have some form of dialogue, or it's right click travel to one destination only. Don't really know if that'll be a problem, but it's probably something to consider. Maybe they'll change it in Deadman so there's like something that you have to do, or maybe it won't even be that much of a problem and no one will care. Question 4. Should the process of cleaning finds in Varrock Museum be streamlined? This would include being able to take more than one rock from the box at a time, the cleaning process being automated, similar to creating vials of potions, for the whole inventory rather than individual, reducing the time it takes to clean each find, adding a left-click take option for the specimen tables. I have to say, from my own experience, when I first had to do the cleaning of finds in the Varrock Museum, this is typically used to gain kudos, which you need 100 of in order to be able to start Bon Voyage accessing Fossil Island. You also need to be able to grab the ruby necklace, the clean necklace, or whatever it's called, in order to be able to unlock the dig site pendant, which can also then be used to access Fossil Island and also Lithcran laboratories if you're going to be doing rune or adamant dragons. The first time I did this on my main account, it took me about 3 hours, and it was the most frustrating piece of content that I'd ever had to experience. It was just so dull, and I don't know. I just thought to myself, you know what? There's nothing wrong with having something that's based on RNG, but there is something wrong when you literally cannot do the content without having to feel like it's just making you hurt. Second time round on my Hardcore Iron Man, which I actually obtained very recently, I got it within 6 finds, so it wasn't that much of a problem. But I understand that place in particular is a bit of a pain. It's not taking away anything. Don't care, I will vote yes for this. Just because we had to suffer, it does not mean new players have to suffer either. Let's get it fixed, let's make it easier. It's still going to be as rare or random, whatever it was as before. It's just no longer going to make you want to quit the game. Good job, Jagex. Poll question number 5. Should Mystic Robe sets be created for the Grand Exchange? This would allow players to easily buy and sell entire sets of Mystic Robes that would be separated by colour. So I'm assuming this is the boxes where you can, for example, get a full rune box, or like the Barrow's armor boxes. I believe currently you have to buy Mystic separately. Sure, I don't see why there'd be a problem with that. Most people these days, I can't remember the last time I needed a full set of Mystic, especially considering the fact that I'd be wearing Barrow's gloves. I'd be very likely wearing a different pair of boots rather than Mystic boots and helm. You typically be wearing like a black mask or a Slayer helm anyway. But for those that do, and those that want to just sell a full set or buy a full set, sure, if it's not going to take too much work, I don't really mind. Poll question number 6. Should the number of trades you are able to see in your Grand Exchange history be doubled from 20 to 40? Wow, okay. That's actually a really nice question to see in there. I'm always a huge fan of being able to get more information from the game, as long as it's information that's kind of like fitting with what you're actually doing in game. So, for example, boss logs, kill counts, how fast you've killed stuff, the amount of times that you might have completed a particular activity. I like all of that. And the Grand Exchange history, I do find that sometimes I'll have bought a few different supplies. Maybe I've accidentally bought like 1 or 2 or something rather than buying 100. And I really wanted to see last week how much a particular item I bought for. I bought like I'd actually had to spend compared to how much I was selling it for now, and there's just never enough space. So very good one as well. I'd really like to see that. Very happy to see it in there too. Poll question number 7. Should the chat box on mobile stay open/closed based on your previous session? A little bit of a spelling mistake here, but I'm sure that'll be fixed by the time this video gets uploaded. Currently, it automatically opens each time you log in or change worlds. Yes. I don't really use mobile that much because whilst I'm streaming, I'm typically playing on desktop, and when I'm not streaming, I'm not really playing RuneScape. But the times that I have been on mobile, the fact that it opens every single time can be a little bit annoying because the chat box is easy to misclick on, which then brings up the keyboard, and having that hidden just eliminates that, and I would definitely not be against having that stay closed. The main thing that I'd probably say is that I don't really feel like this is something that needs to be polled. There's always this kind of like uncertainty as to what should or shouldn't be polled. But given some of the recent changes that haven't been polled, and some of the recent changes that have been polled that probably shouldn't have been polled, this to me feels like something that should just be changed as a feature thing for mobile. And that's coming from someone who is an avid believer of poll absolutely everything that's required. But this almost seems like a no-brainer as to the fact that it's just following on from your existing behavior. However, don't really care. I think it's going to pass straight away, and it's nice that they gave the players the option to actually vote and say whether or not they want it to happen. Poll question number 8. Should a counter be added to the brimstone chest found next to Konar on Mount Karulm to track how many times you have opened it? Following on from what I said about poll question 6, I'm always a fan of seeing more information, so this is an absolute yes from me. I believe that one thing they probably should add in here, which they haven't, maybe it's not the case, maybe they'll add it in later at the time of this video going live, is that it will only track chests that you've opened since they added in the tracking, unless they already have it in there but they're just not displaying it, I don't know. But typically, it's only since you've started opening them, and that might just help reduce a few questions that people are going to have. But overall, I think it'd be nice to just know how many you have actually opened. I know a lot of people are currently saving up all of their keys rather than opening them because they want to know how many they gained from like 60 to 99 Slayer, for example. So this would be one way to avoid that, and you just at least have an idea of how many keys you actually got. So poll question 9. Should the restriction requiring players to assemble a dark totem before being able to receive more pieces be lifted? Currently, you must combine your pieces before any more are dropped from creatures in the Catacombs of Kurend. Now I have to say, I never thought I would see a question like this in a blog, because it's one of those, it's like very frustrating when you do it, but then it's also a way of saying like, look, you know, you're not really paying that much attention. You should be paying more attention to get ultimate reward. There have been multiple occasions, especially when I was grinding towards 95 Slayer, that, you know, I didn't take out the 2 totem pieces out of my bank at the start of my task barraging Necreals in the Catacombs of Kurend, and within the first 10 kills it would drop a totem piece, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to leave because the world will get taken, so screw that. I'm going to stay here and I'll just have to sacrifice not getting 1 or 2 totem pieces. This would obviously eliminate that. You would be able to get more totem pieces. However, I'm a little bit of a cynical and or a cynic. I don't really know the word. I don't really care. I'm basically grumpy, and I would probably say that you should just take the other 2 totem pieces. Then when the next one drops, combine the totem there and then, and you'll get more pieces. And if you're going to that extra effort, you should be rewarded with those extra totem pieces, as opposed to someone who is maybe not paying attention, maybe hasn't really checked out what they're doing before they start their task. But overall, it's a nice change for most players. I think a lot of people are going to really like this. Me personally, however, I'm probably going to vote no to it, because I am, as I say, a believer that the more kind of like attention you pay should directly relate to how much more reward you get. But it's not really that much of a big deal at the end of the day. And I'm sure, as I said, many people will be in favour of it. I can see exactly why it's there. So fair enough. Poll question 10. Should players be able to add blemish oil to the pearl fishing rod obtained from Ulri in Lake Mulk to create an equipable oily fishing rod? I believe the oily fishing rod is pretty useful for when you are fishing scales, I believe, which is a relatively AFK form of fishing, which also gives you lava scales. It gives you something, I don't really know, but it's like an alternative to doing a different piece of content. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is that, like, sure, why not? I think it's a good idea. I think it makes sense. The fact that you have these equipable fishing rods, they take time to obtain anyway. Why not? It's like one extra invent space, not that much of a big deal, and it's not going to really impact anything towards your experience, because these oily fishing rods are typically fairly low experience but low interaction methods anyway. Or question number 11, should the expert mining gloves effect of occasionally not depleting a rock apply when mining amethyst? I've never actually mined amethyst. I'm not too familiar with the experience rates, so this is going to be a bit of an uninformed opinion. I don't see why that's going to be too much of a problem. It will make what's already a fairly AFK mining method like a little bit more AFK, but if you've gone through the effort to get the expert mining gloves, then sure. As long as it's not going to start getting close to the rates that are available through tick manipulation methods, then whatever. This one for me is going to be a skip question. I don't really know much about amethyst mining or how interactive it is or how much of an impact it would have if this was changed. If I did, I would probably vote yes, but just because I don't know, maybe I'll research after I've gone through this blog and figure it out and make a new decision based on that. Poll question 12. Should a Black Knight kill counter be added after wanted? Currently, the quest log shows the White Knight rank, but not how many kills you've achieved. Similar to questions 6 and 8, I like more information, as long as it doesn't take too much time to develop. Be interesting to know if that's going to include previous kills or only kills from this point forward as well. A yes from me. Poll question 13. Should Sandbox have a right-click quick pay option? Currently, players have to go through dialogue to enter the Brimhaven Slayer dungeon. If this question passes, you will also be able to pay automatically by attempting to enter the dungeon if you have enough gold in your inventory. So this is similar to what I said about the Theos, essentially just removing the interaction with NPCs and kind of just making them servants that kneel to every one of your whims. No longer having to engage in dialogue, you're just able to just, basically click away and enter. It's not a big deal, really. It's only a deal for people that kind of like care about that immersion and that whole interaction with NPCs and make it feel like you're playing a game rather than playing a cooking simulator, which is really what we're all doing. But, I still like to think that it is a game overall, because it is, and there is a lot of interesting stuff in terms of dialogue. And yes, it's irritating having to go through and click on the chat and go through the dialogue to then pay. But to me, that's just how I've always known it. So this is probably going to be a skip question from me, just because I don't really care. It is another way to just very quickly escape from people if you needed to and you're in that situation. I don't mean to harper back on towards Deadman, but it would change that a little bit. Maybe not too much, whatever. Poll question number 14. Should players have the option to pay Sanibok a one-time fee of 1 million coins to have permanent access to the Brimhaven Slayer dungeon without paying fees in the future? That's a lot of money. It's a lot of gold. So, heck, why not? I mean, sure, everyone loves gold sinks, right? I do love when you just see like 1 million coins. It's like, $1 million. But it's just like, where did they come with this figure? Like, why is it 1 million? Again, like, whatever. Sure, it's a gold sink. It's not going to make any difference. Poll question number 15. Should animations be added for when a player tips arrows, bolts, darts, and adding feathers to shafts? These animations would not affect the rate at which you do the actions and would not prevent movement or other interaction. Okay. Interesting that actually did go ahead and clarify that it wouldn't do that, because if they were to add an animation that could potentially prevent movement or other interactions, you could be looking at not being able to, say, for example, add feathers to dart tips whilst you're doing other pieces of content. Typically, people will do that in between other actions to really maximize and push the experience per hour rates that you can get, or your efficient hours played, sorry. Agility is one thing that comes to mind. People that make darts in between boss hits, and those guys that really love their ticks, and the guys that really just love pushing the boundaries of how much experience you can gain. And well, hats off to them for wanting to carry on doing it In terms of adding the animation, it's just like one of those niceties. There isn't currently one. You just kind of like stand there and it's like, what is your player doing? Like making potions, you know, there's the animation. It doesn't really symbolize anything really, but you know that you look at it that someone's making potions, but you don't know that someone's making arrows, bolts, or darts because there's no animation. So sure, as long as what they say here stays true and that it doesn't impact anything and it doesn't make it so that you're no longer able to do it between other actions or whilst moving, then I'm happy with that and I think it's quite good. Poll question number 16. Should the model for Xeric's talisman be graphically reworked to resemble Xeric's symbol? Currently, the model is a recolored amulet of manspeak. If this question passes, the mounted version of the talisman in any player's player and house would also be updated. I do love it when these kind of like graphical changes get polled because it's always like a sticking point for many as like, you know, really, who cares? If you were to just update it and make it more consistent and give things unique models how they should be, then everyone will be happy, right? But there are people out there in the game and in the community that like things the way they currently are and they've got used to them and they don't want to see it change, which is why I guess they're still looking at polling particular graphical changes, and hats off to them for keeping up with that. Some people will kind of like slander and be like, oh, why are you bothering doing this? Just change it, no one cares. But the reality is people do care and I like to see them still being polled, even though I think that it's one of those things that should be changed. In terms of this in particular, I like the fact that it actually would look like the Xeric symbol. I actually quite like the way the Xeric's talisman looks, even if it is just a recolored amulet of manspeak, but I don't ever wear it. It just sits in my inventory and I use it to teleport, so sure. If there's free time available for an artist to redo that, all the better. Number 17. Should players be able to use noted molten glass when given Oldak supplies to create Dorgashkan spheres? Right, okay. Okay, sure. Caveman only. I don't know how much this is going to help benefit you. Hopefully it's something good and it's worthwhile. If so, let me know, dude, and I'm going to vote yes. Poll question number 18. Should the Karamja gloves earned through the Karamja achievement diary be graphically updated to match the rest of the achievement diary armor set? Similar to number 16, I personally don't care and I'll just happily let them change those, make things more consistent, and have more fitting, unique models. There are probably people out there that think otherwise, so I'm glad that they're pulling it to a poll, and I'll probably vote yes to this one as well. And we get a nice little example of how they would look. Poll question number 19. Should the god spell icons in the standard spellbook be recolored to make them more distinct from one another? Easy to see information is definitely not a bad thing for me. I always thought they were relatively distinct from one another. I never really had that many issues because I'm kind of like used to the location of them, but again, overall not really that bothered by this one, and sure thing, why not? Poll question number 20. Should Drew and his machine for breaking down sandstone into buckets of sand, as described below, be added into game? The one point that I would say about this is that this section here, as described below, that's not going to be in the in-game poll. Anyone that hasn't read this blog is not going to know what this is referring to unless they've read the other blog and they remember. So it might be worthwhile. Maybe they add this text that we're going to go through in a moment into an image and then say click this image to see more information, or click here to see the dev blog, which has a particular hyperlink that takes them directly to the section so that people can read it and be more informed. Otherwise, people might not know what it is that they're voting on. You would hope that they do, but just in case, I think it's always worthwhile that they explore ways to make sure that everyone is fully informed. Anyway, Drew and his machine. To the west of the quarry, a new NPC, Drew, will be added alongside their grinding machine. Aye aye. Players hand Drew noted buckets they will hold for safekeeping. Players may then mine the nearby sandstone and deposit it into the grinding machine. Unnoted only. Depositing the sandstone will add charges to the machine based on the size of sandstone. 8 charges for 10 kilograms, 4 charges for 5 kilograms, 2 for 2 and 1 for 1. At any point, players may talk to Drew and gain a noted bucket of sand at a cost of 1 sandstone charge, 1 empty bucket, and 50 GP. Sweet. If I remember correctly from the blog before, I believe that at 65 mining, this would make it around about 40% or so more efficient than using sand pits. I'm not sure how it compares to buying stuff from a charter, but the main thing is that the charter is assuming that you're not fighting against anyone else for those supplies, and, well, the reality is you will be, because people will still use the shop because it is one of the fastest and cheapest and low requirement ways of gathering sand, and why would people stop doing that? But if you're one of those guys that doesn't want to worry about competition, just wants to have a nice consistent rate, wants to be able to get the sand at your own kind of pace, I feel like this is actually a really good change, and it kind of like it fits, it feels like it should work this way. The grinding machine is going to be a little bit weird in the middle of the desert, but like, whatever. I'll be voting yes to this. I personally didn't mind the sandpit meta. I didn't care. I haven't done it myself yet, but I accepted the fact that if I wanted to get, crafting earlier without waiting until, say, for example, I grinded Vorkath for a few thousand kills, then this is something that I would have to do, and that's just part of me doing my Iron Man grind. But I appreciate there are people out there that don't mind the grind, but do mind the monotonous, unengaging, and really uninteresting content that means that you have to get there. I will vote yes, just because I feel like this is a much better solution than Sandstorm, and if we get this into the game, it will then mean that Sandstorm isn't going to come into the game at a later date, and I'd much rather see this than that. So that's basically my thoughts on that. So overall, the blog itself is probably the closest that we've ever had to quality of life. I can't really think of anything that's going to be a direct buff that's in here. Most of it literally is just making things a little bit better for the sake of them not being as good as they could be. The only one really is, the whole Dark Totem thing, but that's just because I'm miserable. Probably the best week that we've seen so far. Not really much in there that excites me, personally, in comparison to like previous quality of life months that we've had. But it's a much better shift from the previous weeks, and I think this is probably going to be one of their most successful polls that they've done, because the last 3 weeks, they haven't really looked as good as they could do in the poll booth, and I think that's mostly down to the way things were polled and the information that was being given. That's going to wrap it up for this video. I will be doing, hopefully, more of these in the future, so if you have liked it, please remember to like the video, subscribe if you want to see more, hit that notification button or whatever it is that lets you know when a video does get uploaded, and post in the comments any feedback or changes or anything really about the video. Should I carry on doing them? Should I change something about them? Should I not give you my opinion and just basically read out the dev blog? Is my opinion wrong? Am I a noob? Do I have a big forehead? Should Ronan carry on making his Bronzeman mode videos? Is Seld one of the best YouTubers of the year and will he win a Golden Gnome? Who knows? Anyway, that is it from me. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.